Hey, thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore, and this is Matthew Coller. We just got done watching the Vikings beat the Tennessee Titans 25-16. 1-0, Matthew. 1-0 with Shaun Hill.
1-0 indeed. And you know what? Shaun Hill was pretty decent.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as backup quarterbacks go, we talked about this on our last video. Shaun Hill is okay.
Right.
Most fans of most teams believe that their backup quarterback is a huge problem, and I think that was a thing here in Minnesota too. But Shaun Hill did enough to move the ball fairly consistently, and the fact that he didn't have any running game to speak of and still was able to sustain a few drives and get them in field goal position for makes and misses, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
I thought it was about as good as you ever could have hoped from Shaun Hill.
Sure. Well, we'll get to the Shaun Hill versus Sam Bradford decision, but first
There's no decision going forward. This is Sam Bradford.
I'm sorry, I meant for week one. We'll talk about the decision
right.
to have started Hill.
I thought you were going quarterback controversy already.
Although I would love it as a writer.
It's a little soon for that.
I would love the controversy angle. I don't think we're going to have one either. But something that you touched on there is that Adrian Peterson, 19 carries for 31 yards, was it?
Yeah.
1.6 per. That's not going to get it done. What did you see from Peterson and how that impacted not only Shaun Hill, but the Vikings offense as a whole?
I mean, I think there's a combination of two different things with Adrian Peterson. For one, even on the broadcast, Chris Spielman pointed out a few times where there were running lanes and he just didn't hit them. He looked to have a little hesitation and lack some level of explosion, which I think could have been expected with the fact that he didn't play at all in the preseason. Yeah. And he talked this week about, I'm in better shape than I was last year coming off the injury, and that didn't really show up. But at the same time, if you were the Titans going into this week, what were you focusing on?
Right.
You were looking
28.
at stopping 28.
Yeah.
So part of it, I also think, was he got the ball a few times, and there was absolutely nowhere to go. I just think that if he had been able to even get a couple of big runs, it would have loosened things up a little bit. But in the end, Shaun Hill just kept completing passes. In fact, on one drive, 2 big third downs later in the game. And I think that's all you could have hoped from him, especially knowing that Peterson couldn't get any of those big chunks of yards.
Well, we'll talk about how great the defense was, and we'll also talk about Blair can't hit a field goal Walsh. But first, the decision on Hill versus Bradford. You talked all week about how it just makes more sense to have Shaun Hill start and execute the offense that he's been working on for much longer than Bradford. Clearly, some vindication in that point on the fact that Hill played, mistake-free, basically. The one real glaring problem was Kyle Rudolph dropped a pass and they couldn't pick up that first down. But other than that, it's not like he blew up. Shaun Hill kind of did what you needed him to do on Sunday.
Early on, there was a Stephon Diggs wide open in the end zone pass that did not end up in Diggs' hands. But then later in the game, a vindicating 33-yard bomb on third down that sustained a drive and set him up for a field goal that pretty much put any chance of a comeback out of range.
Sure.
When it came to that decision all week, we talked about it, that Sam Bradford, when he would get asked in press conferences this week, they would say, so Sam, you feel like you're going to be ready to go out there? And it was like, I don't really think so. I'm not sure you guys really know what it's like to try and learn an offense in 1 week that everyone else in the NFL has learned over months and months and months.
Right.
But Bradford made it pretty clear that he wasn't really going to be ready, although the reports keep coming out that he's coming along and learning it fast, as you would expect. But the fact that Shaun Hill was here last year and has a history of being a halfway decent backup quarterback, I think it was, I don't know if I would say an easy decision, but I think going into it, even if it had blown up in flames, it still would have been the right decision to put in a guy who has been proven to be competent in the past. Mm-hmm. If this was some backup, if this was, I don't even know if I want to say Mark Sanchez, he might be too good for this. If this was Jimmy Clausen, I would have said, I don't care, let's sign Joe Webb for a week and put him in. But in this case, Shaun Hill proved it to be the right decision by doing exactly what people hoped and managing the game, hitting a few passes, and just keeping the ball moving, including later in the game, 2 drives sustained on third downs were over 4 minutes as Tennessee wanted to get the ball back after giving up the defensive touchdowns. Yeah. And Hill hit big third down passes and really showed that Zimmer made the right decision.
Well, he didn't score an offensive touchdown. So the reason that the Vikings were in such control of the game by the end was because the defense was so terrific. Eric Kendricks' pick 6 that you touched on. Harrison Smith had an interception wiped off the books. Daniil Hunter picked up a fumble and ran it back for a score. Anderson Dejo recovered a fumble. That's about how you draw it up. If you're Mike Zimmer and the Minnesota Vikings, what'd you see from their defense in week 1?
The turnovers are always a thing that you just sort of have to hope you get lucky with.
Sure.
Them fumbling on a handoff or Mariota getting a little pressure on a play where he's clearly supposed to dump it down to the running back and then just making a bad throw. Those are pure luck sort of plays. Sure. Those are things that you can't expect going forward. But the good sign here for the defense was, as this game started out, Mariota was moving the ball. They were putting together big drives. He was using his legs a little bit. Derrick Henry busted off a 29-yard reception. And I think as it's starting off, there were even some tweets that we saw of, is this Vikings defense maybe not as good as we hoped? Which is classic NFL, right?
Football,
we're 9 minutes into the game and we've decided that the defense is a bust.
Well, we did a video at halftime, and what we talked about, should Blair Walsh be cut?
Right, we were cutting someone, but that's different. That goes back to last year. It's a bigger sample. But going into the second half, it was like, hey, they gained a lot of yards, and if they keep doing that, they're going to score more.
They'll score.
And instead, Mariota looked confused. It was like, and we'll have to go back and look at the film to really see what happened defensively, but I think the Titans not being able to run the ball themselves, shutting down DeMarco Murray. Henry didn't do anything after that one catch. I think that put all the pressure on Mariota to beat a defense that has already a really great pass rush.
Yeah, and weapons all around. We didn't even hear anything out of Anthony Barr on Sunday.
Yeah.
Xavier Rhodes didn't play. This defense has the pieces. Linval Joseph, I think, did have a sack, but you didn't hear his name a lot. There are pieces on this defense that make you think, well, that was a pretty good effort. They could probably improve going forward even.
Yeah. And one of the keys is, too, that they're able to get so much pressure from the front four.
Sure.
And, I mean, this is like the most basic NFL analysis you give. If you pressure with front four, it just allows everything else to work.
The Eric Hendricks interception, because Everson Griffin was right up in Mariota's face.
And that man is a beast.
Yes, he is. Blair Walsh, though. Blair Walsh had an interesting day at the office on Sunday.
He certainly did.
He missed a couple of field goals and an extra point and had everybody wondering, what the heck is going on? Mm-hmm. Who should the Vikings sign in week 2 to be their kicker? Now, he did finish. He went 4 for 6, but dicey day Sunday for Walsh.
I feel like I'll probably make this joke more than once, so forgive me, everyone, but he had like a day that they could make a 30 for 30 out of.
Sure.
I mean, just everything that was leading up to that,
right.
The missed field goal going back to the playoffs, he lines up for a similar distance field goal,
37?
Shanks it the same exact way, and everyone's thinking the same thing, that it's going to be Scott Norwood syndrome. Norwood misses the field goal for the Bills and essentially is out of the league pretty quick after. And we talked at halftime after a 56-yard field goal was shanked. Like, if it's in his head, there's almost no solving that problem.
Well, and to be fair, 56 isn't a cinch gimme field goal, but he was not even close on that 56-yard. It looked like, I thought it was blocked, how far he missed. That was a bad sign going into halftime. Like I mentioned, he did recover. He did hit 4 field goals, but
and one of them from 50 yards too. Yep. And Cordell Patterson with a sneaky couple of good plays in this game. One of them being a 61-yard return that set up that field goal, which had to be huge for Walsh. Sure. I mean, he gets the return to into field goal position just by himself. And then immediately, here's another chance for you from really far out.
Yeah.
And after that, though he did miss an extra point, it was like it snapped him back in.
Sure.
And then he hit the field goals going forward, and I think it's to be determined whether that's the Walsh we'll see or if it's going to be the one for the first 2 kicks.
Just another storyline. No shortage of drama, as you found out in your first 14 days in Minnesota.
Yes, indeed.
No shortage of drama with the Vikings ever. That's new guy Matthew Coller. I'm old guy, I guess, technically then. Old guy Derek Wetmore. Mm-hmm. You can find our stuff on Twitter, at Matthew Coller, at Derek Wetmore.
Maybe washed up.
That's washed up
guy,
past his prime over the hill veteran. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, we'll probably have plenty of stuff on Sam Bradford v. Shaun Hill this week. I think we both kind of feel like that's going to turn to Bradford for the Packers game. But Shaun Hill and the Minnesota Vikings 1-0 with a 25-16 win over the Titans. Check out our work on Twitter. Find Matthew on 1500ESPN.com. Find our videos midweek and then next week too. Until then, we'll see you later.